So now we're going to go through the macros. So the front panel, when you press home, you've got the 8 macros there for performance. And I'm going to take you through the macro assign, how to assign them, how to assign multiple parameters to one knob, and how you could use them in a live setting. But before we get stuck in, I'm just going to basically show you a patch that I've got here called Dafty, and you'll understand why I've called it Dafty when you hear it. And it sounds like a Daft Punk kind of sound. And at the moment, I've turned all of the macros down, the performance macros, so it's going to sound pretty bland. And then I'll start to play with these, and you'll understand the power behind performance macros and how they're going to become useful when producing, using them as automations, or also when playing live, so you can sculpt the sound live. And you just have 8 knobs that do loads of crazy stuff, just with a couple of twists. So what I'm going to do is just play this patch. Maybe I'll just hold one note, or play a few notes like that, and then I'll start to play around with these. So there's pulse width envelope. If we go to macro assign and look at that, you can see that it's opening up mod matrix depth amount 1 and depth amount 2. And if I go to mod matrix depth amount 1 and 2, you can see that it's controlling the envelope amount that is going to mutant 1 and mutant 3. Let's look at mutant 1 and mutant 3. And you can see we've got pulse width original on both of them. So as I open up this, it is using envelope 3, this one here, to open up the depth amount of mutant 1 and mutant 3. So a little bit technical, but you can kind of hear what it's doing. That's with nothing at all. And you can see it happening there on the oscilloscope. Like shifts over with a pulse width. We've also got decay, so I can lengthen the time it takes for that envelope to come back down. So it's basically, go to envelope 3, that decay time there. As I bring this open, it's opening up that decay time. Short and snappy. Or we can bring it up. We've also got sustain as well, which is the sustain portion. So where the sustain lands once it comes back down. The one we've got next to that is drive, and let's have a listen to what this sounds like. Ooh, it's really distorted when I run it up. So let's have a look at the macro assign and see what I've done there. So you can see filter 1 drive, which is in filter 1 on the second page, got drive. It's already at 62. But when we bring that macro knob up, the drive knob, it actually brings that filter drive all the way to 100%. And then what I've done to counteract the volume boost is you can see amp level, I've brought that down by -35. So as I bring this up, the drive's coming up, but then the volume is coming down. So the gain is pretty much matched. If I bring this all the way up, notice the volume peaks quite massively. So I'll put that down to 35, and then it's just to compensate. So you can see how we can be quite particular with the settings, and we can compensate certain parameters as well. Because if I was playing live and I just decided, you know, I'm just going to go to filter and I'm just going to crank that drive all the way up, which I've done in a live setting before, it boosts everything. So you've got to go to the master volume and bring it down a little bit. So it's quite cool that we're able to do stuff like that. Let's have a look at wide. So that sounds great when we bring that open. Makes it wider. Yes, that's really cool. I like that. So let's take a look at that one, see what that's doing. So wide, you can see I've got 3 parameters going on here. So what it's doing is it's boosting the mixer volume of oscillator 2. So it's bringing in an extra oscillator. And then what it's doing is it's panning those 2 oscillators left and right. So initially we've only got oscillator 1. But as we bring this up, we bring in the second oscillator, and then we pan the 2 oscillators left and right to give us that wide sound. Let's take a look at those oscillators and see what they're doing. So you can see oscillator 1 is all and 2 wave, and there's no detuning going on. Oscillator 2, exactly the same, but then we've got 19 cents of detuning, and that's what gives us that really wide sound. The 2 oscillators are slightly pitched away from each other, and then they're pushed out to the left and right stereo. So that's giving us that wide sound. Then we've got pulse width position. So let's have a look at that and see what that is. You can see there we have, mutant 1 and mutant 3 depths. We can bring them up manually by using this. So if we take off the envelope mount, we can manually adjust that depth amount using that knob there. Next, we've got tremolo. Let's have a look at what that's doing. So if we go to macro sign, tremolo, you can see we've got 2 on here. So we've got post effects all the way up 100% wet. And then the amp level is boosted to compensate, because there's obviously a bit of volume drop with the tremolo effect. So let's take a look at the tremolo. So you can see on post effects there, we've got a sine wave tremolo with a rate of 7/8, and then the depth's all the way up there, but the dry and wet's down. So as we bring that up, it brings up the dry wet. And the last one, we've got a flanger on pre-effects here. And let's just take a look at the settings. So you can see we bring the dry wet up 50%. So 64 is actually 50, because if you go all the way up, it's 1 to 8. And then the amp level is brought up again to compensate by 9. So let's have a look at that one. So you can get really cool sounds with this. If we bring all them down to 0 and have a listen, it's very different, that sound. But you could start a track with that and then morph into this really super distorted Daft Punk sound. So I love the fact that we can use these. That was just one preset from the preset pack, but I wanted to show you that so I can give you an overview of how useful the macros are. These were fairly basic macros as well, and I chose them ones on purpose because I didn't want to show you a ton of settings. So I'll show you how to assign a macro. So we're just going to use a different patch. Let's try and find maybe a bass patch. So I'll use this one, and then I'm just going to reset all of the macros. So this is the starting sound, and then what I'm going to do is go into the macros and just delete the first one and edit this one. So you can see we've got 8 slots. None of them are taken up at the moment. So to assign one, what I'm going to do is click assign, press a destination. So I'm going to go filter 1. And then once I've selected filter 1, I can then go in and select the different options available in that module. So I'm just going to go for something simple, cut off, bring up the depth amount. So that's the depth amount for the knob. And then I can set the maximum point by doing this. So you can find the sweet spot and then test it out using that knob there. So that's one, and let's set a few more. So I also want to assign filter 1. Let's go for resonance. So as we bring this up, the resonance comes up as well. Now that's a little bit too loud, so what I'm going to do is the compensation trick, which is to assign the amp and then go to level, bring the level down, try and match it. That'll do. And let's just do a couple more. So maybe I'll assign the delay, and I might want to bring up the dry wet. And let me just go into the delay actually and just change the delay settings. So let's go for 1/8 dotted. Yep, that's pretty cool. So let's go back to the macro sign, the first one. And because we brought up the dry wet, we might need to compensate the amp again. So I just want to notch that up a little bit. Let's see what we've got on the post and pre-effects. So we've got distortion there. Maybe I want to bring in a flanger. Yep, we'll bring that in. So it doesn't sound great, but I'm just trying to quickly do it. So let's assign the pre-effects just to show you how easy it is to assign these. And then I'm going to go to dry wet. Let's maybe do one more. So let's look at the mixer, see what we've got going on here. I might want to bring up oscillator too, so let's just dial in something on this oscillator. Let's bring in a fifth. I know it says 7th there, but if you go down 5, that's the 5th. Up 7 is exactly the same, so it's down 5 from 12. So we're going to add that extra oscillator in. So I'm going to go to mixer again, bring down the oscillator, go to macro assign, go in assign mixer, oscillator to volume, bring it all the way up. Now we should have a macro that works. So let's just check this out. So that's pretty cool, that works. What we need to do now though is we need to save it. I mean, you just exit to save, but we need to name it. So what you can do is, you've got custom name or list name. I often use list name because most things that I'm looking for will be in there. So you can see it just gives you names. So let's say if we want to look for, I don't know, yeah, maybe we need to write our own in for this. So what I'm going to do is just bring it to a short name to make it quicker, like that one. Flick that over to custom name, and you can see we're able to put in our own text. So it's very similar to saving a patch. So all of the same things apply, where you can shift through capitals to lowercase to symbols, and then you can use right to go that way, and then shift and that to go left. So for this, let's maybe call it open. So I'm just going to call it open. So we're opening the sound up, because there's quite a few different things going on here. It's filter, it's also extra oscillators. We can't be too descriptive with everything that's going on, because there isn't enough space. So we're just going to call it open, and you can see it's there now as open. So now we're going to explore the different button settings. So if we go back to system setup, I usually have mine set to reset, but I'm going to put this on toggle and take a look at that one. And then I've just brought it over to an empty patch here. If we go to macro assign, you'll see that I've got this one set so that it opens up the cutoff. And what we can do is we've got a button value there. If we go down to the button value setting and put that, say, halfway, what it means is that we can scroll between 0 and 1 to 8. But if we press the button, it'll go to the button value. So that was supposed to be halfway. It didn't sound quite halfway, so I'm just going to bring it down a touch more. Let's try that. So you can see that remains until I release it. I could change that now, and it'll go to that point. Bring that open, press the button again. It'll take it to this point. Change that slightly. Let go of it again. So when that's lit, it toggles the button value. So let's take a look at another one. I mean, these are pretty cool, but I don't tend to use them. Like I said, for a live setting, I just want to zero the parameters down by pressing the button. That works for me quite well. The time when that would work is if you was coming to a drop and you didn't want to zero them all the way. You wanted to zero them to certain points. Then you could have that toggle on. The next one is trigger. So let's just have a look at that. So you can see it's the same sort of thing. But this time, I have to hold it, or I can do that, which is pretty cool. If you press shift, then it turns it into the toggle. So I don't need to hold it anymore. So pressing it momentarily will trigger it. Press shift and it holds it. So that mode is probably better than the previous one. The third one, before we get to reset, is switch. So let's have a listen to this, see what this does. So with switch, what it does is it basically locks it in. I can't get off that now until I switch to another button. So the way that works is once you've got loads of different macros set up, you can switch to different button points by going through and pressing these. And to set the button value points, you've got to go to that middle one by pressing down and changing the value for each of them. What's quite interesting though is Probably something I need to explore more, and I probably will do in the future parts of this course, maybe when we look into expert sound design tips, is that what I find interesting is that we've got depth amounts for each of these assignments. So let's say we filled up all 8 of these, and then we've got a maximum minimum depth amount for each. What's interesting is the button value can have independent amounts, which makes it super interesting because let's say, for example, we have another 2 fins assigned here, and they all have a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1 to 8. But then when we press the button, only one of them has a 1 to 8 and the other ones have 0. It means that we can be really selective on what we want the button to do. It could do something completely different, which opens up more options and diversity for using the buttons along with the macros as well. So like I said, I only really use this setting here, the reset setting. That just works for me for live, but I need to explore that a little bit more because I think there's something in there which could be quite creative and cool. And I'll probably come up with some patches where we use those as an example and see what we can do with them. So that's pretty much it for the macro sign. And next we're going to talk about the mod matrix.